Hi there. I see that we have several people logging in. I am promoting Balakrishna to panelist, and I am enabling our entries. Lufuno. Hi, how you doing?
Hi, Shane.
Good to have you here. I'm just adding the ability for everyone to talk.
Yes, thank you.
And showing the antitrust policy notice as usual. So this call, as with all other Linux Foundation meetings, is under the antitrust policy, which you can find on our website. And if you're from a Linux Foundation member company, you can, of course, talk to our counsel, Andy Updegrove, with any questions. As we kick off this meeting, everyone should have the ability to talk and chat. That should allow us to do anything that you want. I'm also escalating Balakrishna to co-host, so he has full administrative control. So he's going to be leading this meeting today. The topic will, of course, be the playbooks. We're currently working on the small company playbook, and oops, can you believe that? It signed me out. Oh, and there we are back again. The playbook for the small companies is building out a bit, which is great. It allows us to hopefully cover a lot of material that can be included in the other playbooks as well. The link for the playbook has just been put into the chat, so everyone can access it easily. Since we last spoke, I've been addressing some of the comments in the playbook, and I've also added some new appendices. So 2 policy, 3 process reference material, and 4 training. But there's tons of other stuff to do. We have some comments to resolve and review, and that's what I'll hand over to Balakrishna for. Balakrishna, I'll just turn off my screen sharing so you can share on your end.
Sure, Shane. Thank you very much, and thank you for setting the context.
Thank you.
Yes. So, I hope everyone can see my screen.
It's displaying no problem on my end. Looks good.
Awesome. And looks like we have a lot of comments, and we have had good amount of contribution from many of our colleagues here. Thank you very much. And yeah, so let's go from the beginning. And Shane has already taken, the effort of closing some of the comments, but we have 23 more comments to address to, I guess. So I think we can take it from the beginning so that we can cover, chapter wise. I don't think there's a chapter here, but topic wise at least. So starting from the challenge and definition, we have a comment saying some small businesses are innovators who might also resell. This might be reflected as well to ensure the playbook is inclusive of all SMEs, not just resellers. Yes, so we buy small factory. Okay, sounds good. Actually, this sounds perfectly fine with me, and I think the change has also been implied here. So do we have to, make any changes here? It seems perfectly fine. Martin, do you have any point which we need to, implement here?
So I guess for my comment, I was expanding out or making clear the challenge definition. I mean, in the challenge definition, it doesn't say who or what wrote this IoT Edge application. So my assumption is this small company is doing some of its own development based on open source, and that's it's going to be put on these boards along with Linux. So that's my suggested change in the comment.
Okay.
So, if that is what was intended to be the challenge.
Okay. In that, if we are going by that, I think the change you suggested here, we can utilize that, and we can also, further enhance it, saying the challenge would be to, list the open source components and have it compliant, right? Or to achieve compliance for it. So running an IoT application developed by us.
Yeah, obviously I didn't make the last meeting, so I didn't want to make changes directly into it.
No problem. I think track changes are okay. We have track changes enabled now, so you can make suggestions. Open source components, running an IoT Edge application developed by us on open source components. Yeah. I hope this would be fine. So now we have a more elaborate challenge definition. We buy existing small factor ARM boards that run on Linux. We resell them with a custom housing running an IoT Edge application developed by us on open source components. Challenge would be to make this open source compliant and list all the used packages and licenses. Is this okay?
I think so.
Yeah. If that is okay, I think 2 comments are taken care of. Later, while doing proofreading, probably we can, make changes to the statements. I think I would state this differently. We believe that we are license compliant, but customers are now requiring that we are and asking us for evidence. If we are license compliant, then we would already have evidence and list, right? Our customers may require us to be license compliant. We have limited staff.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it kind of just sounds a bit like wishy-washy, right? Saying our challenge is that they require us to be license compliant. Well, so what? Right? If you're already license compliant, you don't have to do anything, do you? Really?
Exactly.
So this is about, and I don't think they'd be wanting to say they're not compliant, because obviously that wouldn't be a good position. So it's just why I was saying maybe we state this a little bit differently. It's not that they're not license compliant or they want to be license compliant. It's about proving that, isn't it? In a sustainable way for now and the future. So yeah, I was just suggesting a different sentence there rather than customers may require us to be license compliant. Well, so what? You're a small company. Until they do require you, you probably won't do much anyway.
So we can, your statement absolutely makes sense. So what we can change this to here is, if you might agree, our customers may require us to provide proof of or provide disclosure documents.
Well, this is just a hypothetical example with a company, isn't it? So I don't see why we can be more bold and say that they have asked us or something like that, right?
Yeah. I mean, this is the general practice, right? Whenever we are even shortlisting a vendor or procuring a new service, we ask them for bill of materials. And since this document is going to be generic, we cannot per se say we need a bill of material, we need SBOM. Rather, we can say a disclosure document of license compliant, which would mean proof of license compliant. So instead of having this disclosure document also, we can remove this and probably rename it to proof of license compliance. I think that should also suffice, right?
Yeah, I guess I was just being a bit stronger. You could say our customers have started asking us about this, and we expect them to ask to have request documented proof in the future, something like that. That shows that it's a real need. But anyway, it's fine.
And okay. Then I think this should work. And then we had one more person trying to share their views.
I was saying you can leave the disclosure documents because it's more
Okay.
open
Yeah.
and it's not necessarily prescriptive.
Yeah.
Sure.
So we agree on leaving the disclosure document here and then leaving it. Is that what you're trying to say? Please excuse me, my speakers are not
Yes.
really so clear. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. And I saw your comment here, which says that you were not able to change the comment from anonymous to your name. You just have to sign in with your Google ID and it should automatically take your name.
Yes.
Okay.
I'm not sure.
No problem. I think this should solve our problem, right, Martin? So if you do agree, you can probably close this comment.
Yeah, close it for now. I might do some other wordsmithing later. As long as we all understand the intent, it's fine, I think.
Yes. Anyway, we have to do a final proofread before release. So and before we jump on to the larger company version. So at that point of time, probably we can play around with the rewording. Yes, so now probably we can move to the next comment. I was the people involved, senior engineering and management. I was wondering if the people involved can provide more roles like software developers, so the list is not exclusive. Okay. Yeah. So this is actually a great point here, where in new companies we almost everyone would be an individual contributor, and when it comes to software developers in new companies, they would be much involved in the innovative activities. So if we ask them to do an additional compliance activity, it might not go in the favor of the innovative company. That's my opinion, where they're trying to build the product first and compliance as a secondary artifact or a secondary priority. That's how it is in the smaller companies, right? Anything that is with respect to quality or compliance, that comes only after developing the product. But nonetheless, I think this is a good suggestion. We can.
I think. So I was going to say, I think that's a kind of a good comment. And could it be covered by basically saying any other interested staff? Because I think that's the way it would work, right? You wouldn't be excluding people who are interested, particularly in a small company.
Yeah. So rather, we can make it a little more simpler. Here we can remove the senior part, and then we can say engineering and management staff.
That's fine with me. Yeah.
This would suffice, right?
Yes, I think so.
So this would include senior engineering and the software developers, everyone, and then all of them can come together and try to contribute towards the compliance activity. So if you're happy with the fix, you can go ahead and close the comment. It would be much easier if if you would close the comment on your own if you're happy with it. If not, you can add further comments below. I or Shane, we can close the comments at the end of the phase. If something is not closed and if it is still open, we can try to close it during the proofreading activity and then close it further. Right. So let's move on to the next comments. Each step should have a clear goal. Okay. So, oh yeah. Okay, so we need to establish the goal for each step. This probably we can take up offline because there are 6 goals, or probably we can do it right away. Step 1: form a virtual OSPO consisting of engineering, we remove the senior part. Engineering and management representative, identify any of the key figures who need to be involved, such as people from legal, procurement, or sales. Goal for this step is establish virtual OSPO. And second step goal, it's already there. The goal of this step is to allow discovery of the current perspective. Compare the different written policies to understand perspective and combine them into a single written policy. I think we have comments to address here before defining the goal for this. Compare a written policy with the processes currently used and check if the process need to be adjusted. So here, in a smaller company, the written policies need not be as vast or detailed as it would be in medium or large scale companies. Here, the written policies could be as small as defining a list which would say, okay, I do not want to use GPL license, I do not want to use AGPL license. It can be as small as that, and setting that up as a policy, right? So having such policies shouldn't be very difficult. Flowing from step 2 brainstorming session, this is where the template and policy framework would play significant role. So I'm a little lost here. Could you please suggest what is the template and policy we are looking at here? Is it that we need to provide an example of what should be here?
We have already said in the last meeting that SMMEs, it's in the challenge, don't necessarily have the skills, particularly for policy development. So hence the suggestion is that step 2 should be a brainstorming session or something like that, because requiring individuals to sit and develop something they don't know how to do, I don't know if that's practical. So the suggestion was that this playbook must go with different templates so that it's easy for the small businesses to comply. So if the template is there, it's filling the missing words, unlike when you are sitting in your little corner and you don't know what to do.
Yeah, I think step 2 as written is not realistic at all, although I kind of understand the intent. I think step 2 probably needs a bit of thought. There's absolutely no way you're going to ask every single stakeholder of the new virtual OSPO to go and write an open source policy and then compare them. I mean, that's as you say, the intent is to get different people's perspectives here, right? So it might be more likely is that, say, one of them will write one and everybody else will comment or modify, or even just pick up as the example policy document of OpenChain might be a starting point. So I kind of understand the intent is to get some kind of starting point, but the way it's written, I just don't see is going to happen. Most of these people don't even have the ability and knowledge to come up with a policy.
Yeah, definitely. That's actually a very good point, which both of you have made here, and I concur with you. Probably then bringing the a part of adding the brainstorming session into developing this open source policy and developing one single open source policy where everyone can share their comment is the best thing what you explained here in case of a small company. And Martin, if you don't mind, could you please put that in your words here, or Lufano, please correct me if I'm pronouncing your name wrong. Can you please try to add your own words here so that we can further work on that?
Yeah, I'll try to do some edit later. I might not do it as track changes, but like a whole new section for a duplicated section for comment, if that makes sense, so we don't lose anything.
Sure, that should be great.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you very much. So for step 2, we will be getting some points in. I will just drop a comment here saying Martin and Lufano, right?
Lufano, it's FU.
Sorry?
It's FU, not FA.
Okay.
Lufano.
Okay, Lufuno. I'm very sorry for that.
It's fine.
Yeah. Lufuno. Yep. So those were really good points, and it would be great if you could bring them in here. So step 3 is completely dependent on step 2. So we will proceed again. We can bring in the same point what we discussed here, that post brainstorming, finalized or majority agreed upon document can be brought into can be brought in as one single written policy for the company, and then that can be the goal, that is finalizing of the company's majority agreed policy would be the step 3. Right.
Yeah. Yes. I think it just needs a slight change, but after we've decided the exact text of step 2, I think it's pretty close.
Yes. And coming to so I'll just reply to this comment here saying once step 2 is compare the policy concepts against open chain self-certification questionnaire and identify gaps. The policy template should take care of the alignment. Step 4 should be a communication, training, and awareness of policy. Yes, this is perfect. So what I would say is, rather than changing it here, I'll add a statement here. I'll copy this. This. Finalized policy should be communicated and started in the training and awareness policy within the externally where appropriate.
Yeah, I'm not sure that's right. Is that step 4 is to identify the gaps, so the new policies in step 5.
I think step 4 could not. Okay, from my understanding of policy development, step 4 could not be identifying the gaps, because can you please go up on this, because I can't move the document to where we talk about our strategy. So in a sense, I had that flow. I did also the process flow, which I, after discussing with Sean, I think it will come to the rest of the team. The planning of the strategy, what I was saying, because here we will analyze our current. So that is identifying the gaps, my view. So whatever gaps we find, because we are proposing that we must have a maturity model, which I hope we'll be able to present that in our next meeting in 2 weeks' time. So we will then have the gaps here, and the gaps will inform where we are going to start, what will be our starting point on step 1. And I think the assumption is that most SMME will not have the policy. So I think that's why maybe we didn't change much on the steps, but the gaps would have been identified on our planning the strategy. So I would like to maybe advise in terms of what other gaps we will want to identify in step 4 and what purpose will that be serving in this process of developing the policy, because we do need to have a flow.
Yeah, and my understanding was in step 2, we are already referring to the template from OpenChain or references from OpenChain. So in step 4, identifying gaps with respect to OpenChain self-certification questionnaire would already be covered in step 2, right? In addition to what Lufuno mentioned.
No, I see step 2 as being possibly actually documenting what we currently do, which may not be written down, and understanding other people's ideas of what we should be doing as like a starting point. So step 2 is getting us to a starting point, and then step 3 is finding out the. Sorry, hang on. Oops, sorry. No, step 2 is getting kind of started as some people identified. Step 3 is getting us a starting point in terms of a written policy, something written down, which might be based on the OpenChain policy, or might just be written down what they're doing today, or some different ideas of what they should be doing today without looking at OpenChain at all, potentially. So step 4 is then identifying the gaps to OpenChain.
Okay.
And then step 5 is correct. It would be then modifying those things to be OpenChain compliant. I think the steps are fine.
Okay.
But then if we're going to have the template used in step 3 or step 2,
well,
I'm
it's not
not
to
so
be
sure why
prescribed.
you saying what?
Yeah, I think we would only be pointing out that the template exists earlier on as being one possible view in the initial state. Anyway, at the moment we haven't referenced it earlier.
Yeah,
but it's certainly possible to get to that step without using it.
But the intention is to provide the template for SMMEs. So by the time they come to step 2 and do that brainstorming session, if we will call it that, what they're going to be using in step 3 to put together all the ideas will be that template. So already they are compliant to OpenChain.
Lufuno, actually, the final goal of these 6 steps is to come up with the policy and have it established. So I think what Shane is saying is also making sense here, along with your point. But I think I would agree with Martin here, where in step 5 we finalize on the final policy, where part of the final policy.
Yeah, so I suppose it's possible. I suppose it's possible that step 3 might just be somebody says, let's go straight to the OpenChain draft policy. Sorry. Example policy, which I should point out isn't an example policy, so you can't just actually use it straight off anyway, but it kind of just means that one of those steps would be missed out, but that's only one possible way through these steps. So I think the steps still make sense. We just have to write it correctly to cover the different options.
Yeah,
I think we come back to
let
this
me
after
just
I've rewritten a bit.
Yes. So just to make it a little clear here in the recording as well for someone who would view it later, in step one, we establish a virtual OSPO. In step two, we identify the current practices we might be following with whatever awareness of open source we have in the organization. We just jot down what are the open source policies we are currently following with the awareness that is available in the company without referring to something outside, right?
Yes, or our own ideas, basically.
Yes.
Yeah.
And in step three, we have our own ideas jot down in a document, and then we have something like open source reference that is available. We read them through, and then we check what needs to be added and what can be a better practice that can be implemented in our open source policy. And in by the time we come to step four, we have best of our own the step two. From step two, we have list of open source policy which we were already following, and then from step three we have best practices from open chain reference as an example. In step four, we combine them together. Once we combine them, we see that if we fit together with we fit well enough to adhere to open chain self certification. And if we are missing out something from step two and step three, and that is mentioned in open chain self certification questionnaire, then we identify those gaps, list them out, and we come to step five, and then I address the gaps, and then collate it into a finalized policy document, and then impart it into the trainings and all those things. So this should summarize of what these 5 steps should be doing, right? Any confusions here? Or anything you would like to correct me with?
I think I will wait for the edited version so I can flow with it. And maybe I just need to mention that I am contributing as an SMME. So
perfect. Yeah.
It was in the understanding of what will work for us.
Okay, sounds good. So we'll come back to these 6 steps after editing of step 2 and step 3. I think we should have more clarity at that point of time. If that's the case, then we can move to. Oh, I think we are almost done then.
Yeah, so the idea I had was the questionnaire you have here, which is already there. That's why I was not so sure why self-certification will be coming to step 4. My idea was that on the strategy, the strategy there where I referred you earlier, this is what we should be doing before we go to any step. We should establish where are we as an organization using this questionnaire. So as I said, like in the next 2 weeks when we meet, hopefully we'll be able to present the process flow that I've already put together, and we're just waiting for my partner to do the maturity level, so that because it has to work together. But this for me was what we are supposed to start with at the strategy level, so that we know where we are. So when we go to step 1, we already know what is it that we are solving for ourselves.
No, Lufuno, yes, you do make a wonderful point, but see, it would be much easier, to make a list of what we already have, and then compare it against the open chain references or any other industry standard references, than to already have an industry standard reference and to verify if we are doing it or not. So what this might lead to a complication of understanding, okay, we might not be doing anything, because the industry standards or the open chain references are quite large and quite a bit detailed in comparison to what SMMAs or very small companies can be doing right now. So it would be much easier to list down what we are already doing and then compare them against the templates, rather than already have the template in place and then initiate the comparison and then start writing down, okay, are we doing this or not? So that is my opinion. Of course, we all can have different opinions here, and definitely. So what we can do here is we will defer this discussion to next week's meeting, where we have these steps edited, and then we can visit this back and then look at the flow. Does that sound good?
Yes, I think the important part is the flow. I agree with your suggestion. Yes.
Done. Okay, cool then. So I think we wait until next meeting to review these 6 steps again, and then I think the next section is the self-certification questionnaire. This is something which we have copy pasted from the existing questionnaire, and I see that there are quite a bit typos. We'll try to handle this, and I'll reply to your comments here, Martin. I'll edit them, and or if for anything I need to pull in Shane, I'll add him into the comment, and probably we can change it together.
Yeah, no, that's fine. I think there was a comment on step 6, which might be worth at least me discussing with you. Yeah, I guess my comment here was, it sounds a bit advanced, this step 1, and I was just kind of wondering from a more, well, actually step 2 is potentially a bit advanced as well. I guess I was wondering what we think or would be recommending as a minimum, because that's kind of where we're coming from, and that's not especially clear to me, right? Because although I do work in an SME, I know what I'm doing with this stuff. So putting myself in the shoes of an SME that doesn't know what they're doing, what is the minimum for a start, and what should we be actually recommending? I'm not sure we should just be recommending people to go straight with doing these things, because they're potentially quite complicated and expensive.
Yes, so probably in case of some SMEs, the expense might not exactly be a concern. So we have a lot of unicorns nowadays, right? But otherwise, yes, you're right. Expecting an SME to scan their own application for license and vulnerability might be something it might be something too much to ask for, because even to get such a training and get a handle of a tool to perform this scan might be something too much to ask. So we can change this to probably 2 parts. One is approach external service provider to provide you the scan. It can be one-time scan where during the release that could be taken off. They can take off with such a service and then get the reports and share it with the customers. Second one is maybe in the policy itself, they need to come up with some sort of step where they make a list of already using open source components and their licenses, so that they do not have to go for open source scanning mandatorily unless a customer is paying for it. So there are scenarios where when a customer is purchasing a service or a product, they would say, okay, I would pay for your open source scan, and then I would be deducting that amount from your final pay. So there are these things that are also happening with some of the companies I've interacted in a couple of events. So maybe we can change this a tad bit, where we can say approach a service provider for OSS scan, or from the beginning maintain a list of open source packages you use, open source packages and licenses you use.
Yeah, this is where I think it probably needs wider discussion, to be honest. So for example, just taking identifying your components as you brought them in from, say, GitHub, and including the license file of what it says on GitHub the license is. Is that sufficient?
Yes, that should do it for the first buy-in at least.
Well, this is a question. I mean, that's not what I would do, because we know that those licenses determinations are wrong, right? But
so
you
see,
know, 90% of the time. But is that okay as a first step for an SME, as an example, right? So it doesn't even say in this step 6.1 what the purpose of this is. Is this the purpose to get a BOM, or is it scanning to get license text, or is it scanning for vulnerabilities? It's not particularly clear even what it's intended to do. But I think it's, as I say, I think it's probably a wider discussion amongst ourselves as to what we should put here. Because I say I don't think my view is a typical one. So and there's only 3 of us on the call.
yeah, I definitely agree with you. But see, the thing is, we can post this question to the entire education group. We can wait for their response, and we can collect their opinion. That would be a great way of identifying how many opinions we get and then collate it together. But this document is also something like a reference or a suggestion document, and then we are just trying to provide the middle ground of the best world. So even if you're a very small company, you need to have a bill of material, and how you would prepare a bill of material is left to you, as long as it consists of all the component names and licenses. Of course, for a small company, writing a license obligation would be difficult. At this point of time, they can approach an external lawyer for that activity, just to verify if they are adhering to all the license text. But the bare minimum that is expected out of a small company would be to have the list of open source packages they are using and the license that is applicable. And according to their company's policy, if they are open source friendly, they can go ahead with using any license they want, as long as they're fulfilling the conditions or the obligations that's coming with it. Or if they're a core company, then they need to consult a lawyer, where they might have to get rid of some licenses. So this would be a summary of what a small company should be doing.
Right, so step 6.1 is really establish a means to get the list of open source components used and their license type.
Yeah.
Several ways to do this could be blah, 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 blah.
Yes.
Is that what it's supposed to be? And then the second bit is to make sure that it's possible to store or reconstruct that.
Yes.
So otherwise, we're not really explaining what we've achieved or intended to achieve. Okay.
Sorry, please come again.
As written, it's saying that you have to do something, but it's not saying why or what it achieves by doing it.
Yeah, so I can rewrite step 6, and then I can say the final goal here is to have a software bill of materials for your application or your product. And what we achieve out of this is we are collating the proof of license compliance or open source compliance, or product and company being open source compliant.
Yeah.
So I can rewrite step 6 for step 6 here. I'll just add a note for myself. So I'll rewrite this, and then we should be able to, get a better picture once this is rewritten.
Perfect. Thanks.
Yeah. Lufuno, you was trying to say something.
No, I agree with what you just did. I think everything we do needs to also align to the challenges we identified in terms of resources. It's not just human beings, it's also the finances. So like I'm a lawyer, so I know I'm not affordable to SMEs. So the thing is, that's why we had requested for the templates where at least there must be the barely minimum that you should be able to achieve self-assessing or something like that. But based on the maturity model, obviously you need to grow to a point where you now have external independent assurance and stuff like that. But we just need the starting point to motivate SMMEs to do something, not to be burdened by a lot of resources required, and at the end you have more non-compliance because people just don't have resources to achieve something. So I think the playbook must be more enabling than creating more barriers.
Definitely. So our idea for Playbook is to make it a way forward, or it could just give a direction towards where the small companies or any company that is referring this documents is. That is what these documents are intended to be. And yes, of course, what you're saying is right. It shouldn't be a barrier. Rather, it should be showing direction towards what is recommended in the industry. Okay, so that was an amazing discussion, and since the document is very small, we have already reached almost the end of the document, and we have our assignment set. By the next meeting, we will have all these things addressed. We rewrite the steps and add more comments here, and we meet again in the next meeting. Right?
Okay, sounds good.
Yeah, thank you very much. I think 10 minutes for us. Yeah, bye-bye.
Okay, great. Thanks.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you all. Bye-bye.